Hey, welcome back to another video of the Immersive Worlds Handbook. Today I'm back aboard Wonder of the Seas, Royal Caribbean's amazing cruise ship. This is a 7-night Eastern Caribbean trip, and I'm coming from the Sun Deck, Deck 18. First time I've had a suite in Sky Class, and it's definitely worth it. Be sure to watch my other video talking about suites and all the amenities and what you get. But today, I want to talk about something I think that's very important. I want to talk about the service and also about tipping. And I have these tipping envelopes here to talk about because one of the things I think that's important, and this is me talking, someone who worked and wrote about the subject of my dissertation. I was working in the service industry and I was a trainer at Six Flags Astroworld. So I would indeed train people, new workers, grounds quality and rides workers who came into the park, and we asked them to, of course, be friendly with the guests. And so any of you that have studied this sociologically, if you read Arlie Hochschild's work, The Managed Heart, you know about her expertise talking about how sort of the management of emotion is such a key part of working in service. And one of the things that I think bothers me when I'm aboard a cruise ship or any immersive theme space that is a tourist space, of course, where you have guests and you have service personnel, is the occasional situation. I've seen this more on a cruise in the past on a different cruise line where people were openly rude to staff, and I almost wanted to like intervene and say something to those guests or call security, because you see this and it's so unfortunate that this happens in any service space. And I tell you, as someone who worked in it, I dealt with it. The employees I trained dealt with it, and it's never fun or pretty to see. So one thing I'm going to say about service spaces like this is, if you're coming on board as a guest, to really be friendly to people and to be courteous and to exhibit grace in your interactions with people. People are, quote, serving you, but it's kind of bad to think of it that way, because you don't want to think about either a class position or a tourist power position based on your status versus other people's status. And of course, status on a ship varies with position. Captain of a ship, I would argue, has more status than most guests on the ship, depending on how you define status or social class. So I think it's important when you come aboard a ship to, you shouldn't have to tell adults to be on their best behavior, but I've seen enough cruise guests who are rude or whatever that it's always a reminder for me to say this in my videos. I'm kind of like looking around. I have a pretty private space to myself right now. So that's kind of first point, is to be nice. The second point is to think really about using opportunities to be on a space like this to, create some new relationships, albeit these might be short relationships, but when you interact with the staff on a ship, they're happy to talk to you. We have the great fortune of being at the Coastal Kitchen, and I was talking with the manager of the Coastal Kitchen up there, Basim, and just asking questions. Nothing that they can't tell us, but I'm curious about like operations, and I'm curious about how the food gets delivered and all this kind of stuff. So the second bit of advice for you is to really make some friendships, even if they're temporary, and to enjoy the camaraderie of just sharing spaces with people. One of the things I love about a lot of cruise ships, and certainly the case with the Royal Caribbean, is the fact that you have people from around the world, and they even do a cute passport book that you can go around. Maybe kids and families do this. You can get signatures from people and all the different countries, and maybe learn some phrases in other languages. So certainly cultural enrichment, I think, is an understated value of doing a cruise like this one on Wonder of the Seas, and it's the same for any of the other cruises I've done, whether on Celebrity or Princess. I love the multicultural staff, and you get to learn new accents and new customs, and people talk to you about food or whatever, things that they've done in their own home culture. And tourism, I think sometimes, anthropologists like myself talk about tourism as a meeting ground of different cultures. It's not always a positive meeting ground. So I think it's an opportunity for us to really extend grace and kindness when we interact with people, the staff on a cruise ship. Again, do not treat them as these guests I observed on a British cruise ages ago, and it was very, very uncomfortable. I won't mention the country they're from. It doesn't really matter. The point is, to be nice and to make some new friends and share some new cultural experiences. The next thing is super, 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 super important. And this kind of goes to, again, someone working in service industry. I've had partners in the past who have, waited tables and worked in casinos and depend on tips. So one of the things you note with not everybody who works on a cruise ship, but many people who work on a cruise ship are often, in fact, they do, during our cruise, they had National Seafarers Day, which was really cool. It was a day of recognition to recognize that people are often leaving their family and loved ones behind many miles away, many continents away in some cases, while they work on the cruise ship, delivering excellent service to you. And by the way, I guess I'm partisan here. I'm not associated with any cruise company of any sort, but the Royal Caribbean experience has been absolutely amazing. Everyone I've interacted with, down to mechanics, down to people fixing the room, making up the room, service staff, everyone's been absolutely amazing. So it's really a compliment to Royal Caribbean, because they deliver, I think, a product here at the service level that is absolutely amazing and outstanding. But one of the things I want to mention then is a lot of these workers then, as we celebrated on Seafarers Day, are living far apart from their families. They're sacrificing to deliver for all of us excellent service and excellent guest first, as we called it at Six Flags Astroworld and Six Flags the company, guest first experience. So that sacrifice, I think, has to be noted. We can note that sacrifice and appreciate it and give thanks with our everyday interactions and being nice to people that we see on a cruise ship. But very important to me is that we acknowledge great service with the tips, with gratuities. So these are gratuity envelopes, and if you happen to go aboard a Royal Caribbean ship, you're going to find these in guest services. If you're in a suite class, if there's a suite deck, you might find it with the concierge there. If you're in like a star class on Royal Caribbean, your host or genie would be able to give you these. And of course, your cabin steward can as well. But I want to make a really important point here, because I think one of the things that doesn't get acknowledged with the service is that one of the ways we can acknowledge it is through gratuities. And for anyone who's worked in the service industry, you depend on it. You have a base wage, and then you have tips and gratuities above that. So what happens on most ships today is gratuities are pooled. And so in our particular case, per day, per person, so there's two of us, my wife and I, we pay $20.50 per day each. So that's a total of $41. So if you think about that, the $41 is split between everybody. So you have your bartenders, you have your cabin stewards, you have waiters, waitresses, you have hosts. I mean, so many people, all the people doing activities, recreational activities, running pickleball games just outside here, doing the slide, which I had a chance to do yesterday. So all of these tips get divided. You might say, okay, well, you're spending then per day. This is in suite class. It's varied upon the class you're in. And indeed, in some of the higher classes that might be included in your cruise fare, because you're paying a much higher price. And in some cases, the fares can go upwards of well over 100% more based on the type of cabin that you're in and all the amenities, the suites, etc. So, the tips are not always relative to the type of room or to what you have directly paid, but I think it generally works out probably with some kind of algorithm. But the point is, that is only a partial amount that you're giving to people. And so you want to think, well, I've had really great service, and so how can I express gratitude for that great service? By giving more tips above and beyond the included grats per person per day, which are mandatory. So two ways you can do that. Again, we're talking here on a Royal Caribbean ship. One way is you can, if you have credit, you can certainly use your onboard credit on your card, your SeaPass, I guess it's called. And you use this, of course, to unlock your door, but it also has your account on it. You need this when you leave the ship. And then it has your account money on it. So if you want to buy, a hot dog at the Doghouse or a shake at Johnny Rockets, you would use this. So that's one way. What you do in the case of Royal Caribbean is you go down to guest services and you simply do a transfer You fill out a form. You have to have the name of the employee and I believe their department. I haven't done this one yet, but we'll be doing it because we have some extra money. And this is a great way to use up your credit, because if you're not using it, you have to spend it or lose it, kind of thing, kind of like Disney dollars at Disney theme parks. If you leave the park, you can't use the Disney dollars anymore. So it's kind of important to know that that's not going to transfer like to your next cruise or something like that. So we want to use ours up, and one great way to do that is to just go and max out like all of your cash, what's remaining on your C card, and then that way you have nothing left. If you're still going to use it and buy a hot dog or a spa treatment, of course you can go and do that. That would be fine to use it. But the other way is to get these envelopes. Again, as I mentioned, you can get these at guest services, and they're just very simple envelopes that have Royal Caribbean on them, and they allow you to put your tip money in it, and you can write a note, whatever you want to do. So we decided to do was to try to think of, in our case, it's maybe 4 or 5 people that we interacted with very closely, and we feel like they went above and beyond. So certainly our waiter that we had every night in our dining room for dinner, and generally the most connection you're going to make, I think, with staff in some of the restaurants. It really depends on where you're eating. If you're eating at a buffet at the Windjammer or Coastal Kitchen or a specialty restaurant, most of you are not going to eat at a specialty restaurant every night or the same every night. Some could. It's certainly allowed if you have an unlimited dining package. But what you can do there is, when they bring you your bill, even though you've prepaid and you paid a grat on top, so in our case we went to Wonderland and we paid, I believe, an 18% gratuity on top of that for our wait staff, our host, and it's more performative at Wonderland, so it's a little bit different setup. But what they then do is, with your bill, they'll bring you additional tip if you want to include that. You could leave cash. You could also write that in, and then it'll be deducted again from your balance, from your credit, and you will have to settle this when you leave on your last day with a credit card or whatever, if you do owe anything. If your account is showing a negative, it means you have excess funds. If you owe, then it's going to be in the positive, just like a ledger, which is in the red versus in the green. So that's one way you can do at specialty restaurants. You could also bring cash. Sometimes at the bar, I will leave, a few bucks here and there. You can leave a $5 or some single dollar bills, whatever currency you're using in your cruise. And that way it's also acknowledging appreciation kind of on the spot. I've seen a few people do it in the actual dining restaurants. I don't know if that's typical, but that's certainly up to you. You could always give people cash and they will not turn it down. So in our case, we thought, maybe 4 or 5 people that went above and beyond. We have actually 2 concierges here in the suite package. This is kind of a new deal they're doing aboard Wonder of the Seas. Again, it includes the amazing suite deck here on 18, and also the suites on 17 and 18. There are a few other suites like the Aqua Suites by the Aqua Theater, but most of them are kind of in this pocket here. And then that way you get to take advantage of kind of this private space, which really reminds me of an exclusive space kind of at a hotel like the Delano atop the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. At least when I was there, it was Delano. I'm assuming it still is now. But so cash tips certainly are something you could do. Again, I think these tip envelopes, if you're going to leave cash, is a great way to acknowledge staff that you've interacted with. You feel like they've given you really amazing service. They've gone above and beyond. If you're wondering, well, how much should you give? We've even asked people in guest services about this. They don't tell you, because it's really up to you. It's up to you, the kind of relationship you had with your service staff. It's also up to you in terms of, to what degree you think they went above and beyond, maybe what your level is. And that's a very subjective bar for every person. As someone who's, worked in the service industry and also trained people in service, it's something that's super subjective, person to person. So you could Google and, go on Cruise Critic and sites like that talk about tipping and gratuities and how much per type of position. It's also going to vary, in addition to being subjective and based on a level of service, which is subjective, and you're subjective, of course, on your appreciation of service, but it's also going to vary based on the type of position, the amount of interaction you've had with someone, the level of difficulty of their work. And I would say all positions on a cruise ship are really hard, but they vary in terms of just what is required for that position. Some people have to get work done in a shorter period of time than others. So, you just kind of use your common sense, I guess I would say. Google a little bit, look on Cruise Critic and see what people have to say. about tipping, gratuities based on, you know, the number of nights of a cruise. So if you're on a 3-night cruise versus a 7-night cruise, you think whatever you have in your head is a per day for a particular position. Again, in our case, maybe 4 or 5 people we want to recognize. You want to then think about spreading that over the course of those days. So if you gave someone $50 on a 3-day cruise, I would say, again, unless the circumstances are different, then you know, compared with a 6 or 7-day cruise, you would double that to maybe $100. So you kind of have to use some common sense and think about what you want to do in terms of your gratuities and tipping. But I just want to say it's super, super important, because I think a lot of people don't tip above and beyond the included grats. I personally don't think it's enough, just because, again, a lot of folks working on ships are sending money home to their families. It's important for you then to acknowledge that and to really think about the hard work that they're doing. If you're on a Caribbean cruise, folks are working in some days 90-degree temperatures, some days 100% humidity. So again, you really do need to acknowledge that in these various ways I've talked about here in this video. So I hope some of this is helpful. I wanted to offer this video because I looked around and I didn't find that many videos that were useful, at least, or that many in number, on gratuities and tipping and the whole service climate that you'll experience aboard a cruise ship. So that's going to do it today here from Wonder of the Seas, the amazing cruise ship I hope you get a chance to experience here by Royal Caribbean, 7-day Caribbean cruise out of Orlando, Cape Canaveral, Port Canaveral. So I appreciate you listening to these videos, and I hope you come back for additional videos here for the Immersive World's Handbook.